Redditors who grew up with strict parents, what was the craziest rule or punishment you had to deal with? Before we go to the first story, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Number 20. My grandmother was a retired English teacher. One day, I called my brother stupid. I was 4 or so. She filled me in on her rule that if I couldn't spell stupid, but I called someone stupid, then it was really me that was stupid. Thus, I should never call someone a name that I couldn't spell. So in my 4-year-old head, rather than avoid name calling, realized that I didn't know how to spell dumb, so that word must be permitted. I spent the rest of the day overusing the word dumb, and she wasn't quite sure what to do at that point. Number 19. No talking at the dinner table other than the occasional, do you want some more of blah blah blah, or please pass the blah blah blah. We could not talk about anything at all. No small/idle chat was allowed. The first time you did it, you got yelled at. The second time was a whooping, and then said to your room until the next day without the rest of your meal. I make it a point now with my kids to chat up a storm each and every meal. Edit. It was my dad's rule to not talk at the table. I think this was because he grew up in a very large farming family, 11 boys, 3 girls, and 2 adults. Having to feed a family that size 3 meals a day was likely very time-consuming, and with this being a farm, there was work to do, so the faster the gang got done eating, the more work could be done. This was back in the late 40s, early 50s era. I believe it was a carryover from that. He did loosen up later when he got to be 50 plus, and 2 out of the 3 of us kids were 20 plus. Mealtimes for my family are hugely social times, especially dinner/supper, as that's when we are pressed for time. We talk about whatever comes to mind. We laugh, joke, and just talk, and even have the occasional food tossing at one another. I rarely limit discussions unless it's obvious that my kids are not eating. Usually, a gentle reminder to have a bite or 2 gets the desired result. After we eat, each person then takes their dishes to the sink, and then we usually all flop on the couch to continue in any bits of conversation we think weren't covered. Working shift work, though, this put a damper on it sometimes. Number 18. When I was in elementary school, at about 6 years old, I used to have accidents because my bladder was too small. My mom would punch me in the bladder when I got hauled to make me pee myself and make fun of me when I did. I still have issues, and it turns out that my bladder and uterus is f***ed up from a genetic disease. Number 17. My parents once grounded me for 2 years for getting a B on my report card, took everything out of my room beside the bed, and I wasn't allowed to do anything with friends. A year and a half into it, I asked if I could be ungrounded, and at that point, they had actually forgotten what they grounded me for, but refused because I must have done something bad if they grounded me. Also, they refused to let me stay up past 8 p.m., even in high school. Number 16. I once got beaten and locked in the basement because my hands were literally not large enough to play a certain piano piece. I couldn't play an octave separation yet. Before you ask, yes, I am Asian. Number 15. When I was in 1st grade, I had a writing homework assignment. My dad used to be weird about me erasing because he wanted me to do it right the first time. I ended up erasing a lot on this homework, and my dad took the paper from me, ripped it in half, and told me to start over. Turns out it was the last sheet of paper in the entire house, and I don't remember why, but for some reason we couldn't go and buy more paper that night. So ironically, I ended up having to completely erase an old homework assignment in order to have a sheet of paper to start over on. I'm 22 now and still giving crap about this. Isn't that considered a form of abuse? Number 14. When I was a kid, I had dysgraphia, but my parents didn't know that, so I used to take time to do my homework. My mom would threaten to throw my homework out the window if I wasn't done by a certain time. I lived in an apartment block, and this window was into a service shaft. Number 13. You could earn a full-on ass whooping for uttering any of the following: shut up, but, accusing someone of lying for any reason. We were not permitted to use the words lie slash liar slash lying. Instead, we had to say, that's not the truth, or that doesn't sound right, or any other phraseology that wasn't some iteration of the word lie. Number 12. Not that crazy, just something that stuck with me, since I generally consider my parents to be good slash caring parents, mainly just overprotective. But when I was 15, I got really depressed and kind of shut down academically and socially. My parents didn't know what to do with me. At one point, they ran out of ways to ground me, and my life was consequently made up of just going to school and coming home and lying motionless in bed, staring at the wall or sleeping. But my grades still hadn't improved, so they thought denying me of privacy slash solitude by taking away my bedroom door would persuade me to get my grades up. Spoiler alert, it didn't wall. Edit. I feel like I should address the sentiment in some of the responses that my parents weren't good at parenting. They really are good parents, and we have a much better relationship now. I'm 20 into college in another state. Before this, they tried for months to figure out what was going on with me and slash or how to fix it with more compassionate and pretty typical methods. They really did want to help me get back on track, but my depression manifested primarily as a sullen silence and a passive refusal to do homework, study, do chores, etc. I think the combination of my attitude, refusal to engage, and an oppositional, defiant disorder diagnosis from a therapist who I still believe was biased in favor of my parents in this conflict. Considering how she spoke to me and the fact that she brought up a relationship with her kids a few times during our meetings, led them to believe that I just hated them and wanted to hurt them emotionally. I mainly just wanted to be left alone. For the most part, we've moved past that year, as it was hard on all of us, and I view this incident primarily as a mistake made during a difficult time by otherwise very loving parents. Number 11. Bit late, but one day the news said school might be closed for a cold day, like a snow day, but for when it's cold enough your exposed skin freezes in less than 10 minutes. My mom demanded I start walking to school, or she'd report me to the cops as truant. We argued. Phoebe said the school started late that day. I decided to go anyway, that being better than the arguing. She then decided I was to stay home for her to call the cops. I shoved past her, which she yelled at me was assault, and then locked me out of the house. Halfway to school, I was told the school was closed. I had to call my dad to be let in the house again. That day I promised myself I'd leave home as soon as possible. I've stayed halfway across the country from my mom ever since. Number 10. No TV. Not as a punishment, just no TV ever. Because apparently it lets the devil in. The second as the last kid moved out, they started watching TV all the time. Edit. Wow, I am astonished at the interest this post has received. I'm not surprised that no one guessed correctly. I will gladly satisfy everyone's curiosity. My parents were a part of a Christian religious offshoot named The Move or The Move of God. It was founded by a man named Saint Fife and is continued today by a man named Buddy Cobb. These are all facts that can be Googled. I'm not breaking any Reddit rules by putting this out here. Some things the Move believed in that we had to endure as kids. Women had to wear dresses, no TV/video games, forced participation in religious ceremonies, little to no contact with the outside world. All my friends were Move sites, exorcisms. The school I went to was part of the Move group too. There was no escape. Wow, okay, just typing this out is kind of bringing me back to that place. I gotta stop now and take a break. Number 9. When I was 13, no dating until uni when I was 18. No dating until I finished uni when I'm 20 and about to graduate. No dating unless it is someone I choose for you. What the F? Context. When I was 12-13, this girl had a crush on me and I had no idea until someone told me. So I asked my parents what I should do. You know, I'm young. I didn't know what to do. And they forbid me from dating. Of course, the strictest parents create the most rebellious children. I've dated a few times during high school, and the last relationship in high school had an adverse effect on my academics. Broke up on the morning before an exit exam. In uni, I met my current girlfriend, and under the assumption I was allowed to date in uni, I thought it was a good idea to introduce her to my parents. Oh boy, that was a bad mistake. I got massive backlash saying that it was a bad idea to jeopardize my studies for a silly relationship. 3 years later, she graduates, defers her postgraduate study for a year, and travels the world while still maintaining the relationship's strength. Number 8. My brother stepped on the PlayStation 2 controller cable, sending the PlayStation 2 flying off the shelf and smashing it all over the floor. As punishment, my dad whipped me across the back a few times, and when I tried to run away, he threw some rocks at me. The whip marks stayed on my back for a few weeks. Number 7. We weren't allowed to have food upstairs, but I had food wrappers in my trash, and so they searched my whole room, ripping clothes off hangers, throwing stuff out of drawers, etc. And for 3 months, I wasn't allowed in my room for anything unless accompanied by one of them. I slept on the couch. Number 6. Well, this one time I didn't want to finish drinking my milk, so my dad threw the cup across the room, shattering it and getting milk everywhere, while he proceeded to flip my chair over while I was still in it. Then he crouched over my body saying, "You want to mess with me?" a bunch, and stormed out telling me to clean up the mess. And just lots more stuff like that. Number 5. The word disgusting was banned and could have been considered just as bad as saying half. We weren't allowed to close doors unless we were in the bathroom. We weren't allowed to watch Cartoon Network because it was garbage. They actually put a parental lock on Cartoon Network. The worst punishment was one time they decided that we were such bad kids. My sister was like 14. I was 12-ish. That they took everything we owned and bagged it up into garbage bags and made us carry them out to a burn pile, and they burnt everything we owned. All of my childhood memorabilia, pictures, clothes, diaries, everything. Burnt it all up. When it was done burning the next day or so later, my sister and I looked through the ashes, and all that was left were 2 silver rings of hers that we cleaned off and kept. Crazy. Number 4. I was not allowed to use public restrooms. I ruined our Disney trip because of how many times we had to go back to the hotel, not on site, when I was 6. And I quite honestly had accidents when I was far too old to do so, because my parents had my teachers reporting bathroom use to them too. There was no place I could safely use the restroom other than home without getting into trouble. Finally, I got to use public restrooms without punishment when I f***ing went to college. No, I'm not kidding. But I got pretty good at hiding restroom use in high school because the high school refused to report it to my parents. Why did none of these teachers spot the abuse? How? Number 3. As the eldest son of a Southern Baptist preacher, I was held to some high standards. Being seen and not heard, and that my every action was a reflection of my father as a leader to his congregation. I found music to be a great outlet, but of course, any non-Christian music was not allowed and immediately destroyed upon discovery. Spare the rod, spoil the child was a mantra ingrained in my daily life. Once I was into my teens, and spankings with stretched-out coat hangers were no longer enough to be considered punishment due to the lack of tears, my father moved on to shaving my head. Nothing like the constant reminder of how unworthy one is once their physical source of personal identity is forcibly removed. Number 2. Oh, well, I can answer. My mother is an honest-to-good narcissist. I graduated from high school early at 16 and didn't go to college immediately, so I worked a part-time job while all my friends went to school. Anyway, when all my friends graduated high school, we celebrated by going to the movies. My friend's mom dropped us off, and another friend's father was going to be picking us up. My mom was very upset at me going to the movies anyway, since it wasn't going to be over until after 9 p.m. by bedtime at the time. Anyway, finally she let me go on the condition that my friend's dad get me home by 10 p.m. My friend's father ran into late-night construction on the way home with me and several other friends in the van, and the closer it got to 10 p.m., the more I started freaking out. telling everyone I was going to be in huge trouble if I didn't get home like right now. My friend's father assured me he would speak to my mom and all would be fine. I was the first to be dropped off because I was panicking so severely. The moment the van pulls into the driveway, my mom comes barreling out of the house telling me she was going to kick my ass for being late and keeping her up. My friend's dad tries to calm her down and separate her from hitting me, and that is when she realizes I'm chewing gum. Now my mother hated gum, said the only reason you would ever chew gum was to hide something. So naturally she makes the assumption that I was late / chewing gum because I was busy sucking my friend's dad's. Yep, that was the only explanation in her mind. She grounded me for 12 weeks, an entire summer. I wasn't allowed to have a phone, cell phone, TV, or books for the entire summer. Every morning my mom would take the cable box, home phone handset, and keyboard to make sure I couldn't do anything. Needless to say, my friends never invited me anywhere again in fear that my mom would call the cops and accuse me of sucking their dad's. She also used to report my car stolen if I didn't call her back when I was in college. Number 1. I dealt with a narcissistic / abusive mother. Most of my punishments weren't huge because I was a really good kid, but on my 18th birthday, because I asked for gas money the day before, the first time ever, she took mine and her car keys with her to work and took the shed key, no garage, so I couldn't even ride my bike, and left a note on the kitchen table saying, "Happy 18th. Now you're an adult, so get out of my house." I spent my birthday alone, trapped, and miserable, all over $10, a few points. I have since moved out after being kicked out of on and off for about a year. I am going on 23 this year and left at 19. I have no contact with her and never want to ever again. Yes, she is a Yes, she had the right to take the car, and it was not GT Day, as the car was registered and titled in her name, something she did on purpose to be able to take the car whenever she wanted. And to everyone commenting, yeah, I got kicked out on my 18th birthday too. I'm sorry if I don't get to you personally, but I am so sorry and I hope you're all in better places. If you like more of this video, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thought and tell us your fantastic story in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video.